Hi everyone, I am David Lipton from The Reckoning, July 4th, 2030. Welcome to our 11th in a series of weekly podcasts. This podcast is called How Do We Know What We Know? In the last two podcasts, we covered the hurly-burly of politics and voter behavior. These serious topics are difficult to confront head-on because it often involves admitting that we were mistaken in our judgments and reactions to people and events, both today and in the past. The exhilarating side of dealing with the limits of our political views is that we not only expand our self-understanding, but it enables us to reach out to others in a more constructive way. All the same, it's a tough challenge. As promised at the end of my last podcast, we will look at the heavens, especially the sun, for a more enjoyable approach to our behavior in politics. Let's imagine we are talking to a crowd of people and we ask them two questions. One, how many think the earth revolves around the sun? And then, how many of you think the sun revolves around the earth? Are you being serious about this? Most people would wonder why bother asking questions with obvious and generally accepted answers. 100% of the crowd, well, maybe not exactly 100%, would answer something like this. These are the well-established facts. The Earth spins on its axis at 1,000 miles or 1,600 kilometers per hour, and it travels through space around the Sun at 67,000 miles or 1 kilometers per hour. Are you sure about these facts? How do you know they are true? Let's be clear about all this. Of course the Earth revolves around the Sun, but what I see and feel does not support that view. From where I stand, the Sun moves. The Earth does not. The sun rises in the east, moves across the sky all day, and sets in the west. How can any of you possibly disagree with what we all see and experience? What are facts anyway? The short answer is that facts are the combination of generally accepted data, theories of how they fit together, and how we embed those two in our thinking. We must stand our ground somewhere. It is our platform for making sense of who and where we are. Without a firm platform of belief, it is difficult to make sense of anything. In short, platforms are a combination of accepted facts and our understanding of how facts are connected to our general view of how things happen. Okay, this has all been very entertaining. However, you have lost me. What has this got to do with my values and the way I vote? I'm sure my listeners know that political parties spend a great deal of time creating their platforms. Sure, everyone knows that much of what is contained in these political creations will never come to fruition. That misses the point. The purpose of these platforms is to get everyone together, to galvanize them to do battle in the next election. It's all GoTV material. Get out the vote. It is neither possible nor necessary that we go through in detail the platforms of each party. Besides, many people will have some idea of what those platforms are about. If you want to go to the internet and ask your favorite GPT AI service to describe each of them, go ahead. You will receive a cornucopia of information and plenty justification for standing your ground on today's political issues. These platforms are the mental ground that holds our values and choices together. These are the narratives that we choose to accept. The Democratic and Republican divide is clear. There is a conflict of visions of how to manage our republic. My faithful listeners may recall in an earlier podcast my enthusiastic reference to Thomas Sowell's subtle and balanced book on the conflict of visions, written almost 40 years ago. As an aside, I would add a comment from the New York Times when they reviewed Sowell's book back then. Quote, "There is nothing one-sided about his argument. He makes his case fairly, lucidly, and persuasively." At least that's what the New York Times thought then. Republicans will argue the government that governs least governs best. Less intervention in our affairs is their goal, and leaving each citizen to go about their own affairs is their holy grail. In their turn, Democrats will argue that the government that governs most governs best. More regulation of our affairs will lead to social justice, where the individual citizen is encouraged to rely more on government largesse. That is their holy grail. Elections are the mechanism for choosing one view over the other. Often the electorate tends to alternate between the two opposing views. That is often reflected by the personalities of the leaders or the presidents that are up for election or re-election. One major development muddying the waters of our political life in the past 2 decades is what I call the Hollywoodization of our approach to supporting or opposing political candidates and parties. In a nutshell, it's the focus on personalities rather than policies. Do you remember that cartoon of a presidential ballot offering us a choice between, quote, a convicted felon or a, quote, a corrupt puppet? It is now the fashion to say nary a word about policies or the principal duty of the president. There is only talk about personalities. Does anyone even know the last 10 words of the president's oath of office? For the record, the president swears to, quote, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, end of quote. Can either a felon or a puppet properly do the job? Is this not a caricature of the two men? Does it make any sense at all? I don't think so. And I don't think you do either. Is the sun or the earth moving? That issue is settled. In politics and social life, where nothing is permanently settled, it all boils down to where we stand, both physically and mentally. Oh yes, I almost forgot the answer to this podcast's question. We know something because we have convinced ourselves that what we believe is true, worth knowing, and is generally accepted by others. Our next podcast will deal with the hot topic of immigration to the United States. Goodbye for now, and thank you for listening in today. You can access more of my thoughts by visiting Amazon.com and search for The Reckoning, July 4th, 2030. See you next week.